Yo guys, Vision here bringing you some more Call of Duty Warzone content with the best loadouts to be using right now in Warzone. In this video, I'll identify the best meta weapons to be using as of right now, following the latest update for both the new map Haven's Hollow, the Resurgence map, as well as Verdansk, with various builds to cover different types of playstyles, with a previous episode linked in the description from last week, which covered guns such as the MXR, the Mirage, the MPC submachine gun, sniper rifle with the Recon, Peacekeeper, you name it. There's other builds on there in case you guys are interested in checking that out. That is linked in the description. But for this one, we're going to get underway with the first set of guns for the new meta going forward. So first things first, guys, what I'm going to do is provide you with various different types of weapons for all kinds of playstyles. Fast-paced submachine guns, which are also meta, as well as last week's episode's weapons, with the slower ARs, a sniper in the previous episode, but we're going to have an LMG taking its place this time round, and 3 ARs, detailing the first few weapons with more detail and their attachments, and then briefly summarizing the rest with TTKs at the end of the video. We've given you guys an understanding and an overview on where these guns lie in terms of rankings in their fastest time to kill in this game, with different variations and attachments which will implement and sort of change the differences in playstyle. So the first weapon we will start this video off is going to be the M15, arguably the best gun to start off with Black Ops 7, but slightly has been nerfed going forward, therefore not the absolute meta AR, which is why the MXR and the Mirage were going into this video were the two best ARs. But just because they are voted or ranked as the two best ARs doesn't mean that this one and any other ARs in the game right now are not also viable and also meta, depending on which type of playstyle you have. Some people don't even like the MXR, some people find the Mirage too difficult to use, therefore this one as a comfort pick might be the AR that you guys want to try and use and try out for yourself, especially if, like I said, if you're camo grinding and you're like myself who's trying to go for the Apocalypse camo in Warzone. This is definitely a gun that you're going to want to try and get used to, using the Redwell 556 compensator for the vertical recoil control, the 16.5 fusion barrel for its damage range and velocity, the iron hold angled grip as the underbarrel for aiming stability and various other recoil control benefits, using the Mayday extended mag for just 45 bullets. I don't think it needs anything more than that personally, especially as a Resurgence player. A lot of these builds are also going to be mainly aimed for the Resurgence game mode, because obviously you're not going to use no sight going into a larger map. So if you're playing Verdansk regularly and you want a sight, maybe lose the underbarrel if you're playing those longer range gunfights and use whatever optic is your preference for like the 3 times or 4 times, whatever it may be. And then for the final attachment, we're going to be using the intervention stock for the recoil control and flinch resistance. Of course, you're going to lose some ADS, so you could lose the underbarrel or even the stock to gain faster ADS speeds with a rear grip, but personally I think this is the best well-balanced setup for this weapon. Now as for the second weapon, we're going to be going with the Kogot or the Kogot, which is arguably the second best sub in the game right now, alongside both the Carbon and the Razor, which we'll go over in a second, using the Hawker series muzzle, which is going to give you that recoil control vertically, the 13.5 barrel for its damage range, the VAS drift lock underbarrel for horizontal recoil control, the frontline extended mag for just 40 bullets, which I think is plenty for this weapon, and the spotted angled rear grip for ADS speeds. I think personally that this balance gives you a whole variety as well as maintaining that speed, because you're not using double extended mag, which means you're going to lose ADS and sprint to fire. But of course you can, if you wanted to, you can lose the underbarrel if you're able to control that horizontal recoil control and then add a stock of your choice for the speed benefits, such as the ADS movement stock or even the Cinder tactical stock, which is going to give you some more speed benefits. But personally, I think this gives you guys a good variety for sort of that medium range gunfights as well as close quarters, where this gun is obviously going to be used more frequently. Then as for the next weapon, we're going to be using the AK, which I think is arguably one of the most enjoyable and fun to use weapons right now, with an incredible TTK which is reliable. But personally I do not like the iron sights. I do think that this weapon overall is probably top 3 best AR arguably, and also just for most gunfights I would say using a sight is definitely where I would go for comfort. But if you can sacrifice this, you're going to gain more speed or recoil control later on for what you're going to gain instead. But I personally would use the LT Mini for this one, alongside the EMT3 compensator for that vertical recoil control. Now for the barrel, I've actually been experimenting with this. I've been trying out the 17-inch bistro barrel, which is going to give you that mid-range damage and recoil control, as I play a lot of Resurgence, and I'm actually experimenting with this at the moment over the long barrel for the damage range, or of course the hybrid, which gives you that velocity too. But personally I think you should try out all 3 of them, because there are certain gunfights where you're going to gain a lot more benefits, and seeing as I'm running a sight, meaning I'm going to lose slight recoil, I thought that the bistro barrel was going to give me that good sort of flexibility with still having more recoil instead of the damage range, but I'm having that medium range benefit rather than excel in the long range gunfights, which I'm not typically finding myself in anyways, which is why I think that the bistro barrel is actually a good experimentation. But try out for yourself, guys. This barrel I think is interchangeable. See what you find is best for yourself, whether you need more velocity or taking longer range gunfights so you want a long barrel. That is up to you guys. And then finally, I would say I will use the extended mag one for the 45 bullets, which I think is plenty, and the buffer springs fire mod instead of a stock, as you don't lose any ADS speed. But of course, you can also consider using the likes of a heavy stock for more recoil control if needed, especially if you're taking those longer gunfights, or even the accuracy rear grip as well, which is going to give you that first shot recoil control and stabilization. Then as for the next weapon, we're going to be using arguably the best submachine gun in the game right now alongside the MPC. I would say that this is tied second best submachine gun in the game right now alongside the Carbon, which is really reliable due to the ammo count and mobility, and of course the Kogot, which we just went over as well. But the Razor is going to be the fastest killing gun in terms of TTK at close quarters in the entire game, which arguably is what makes it the #1 sub to use. However, at a certain point, anything past 15 meters, the TTK significantly drops off. That's why I'm saying it's arguably the second best sub. It just depends on what type of engagements and playstyle, of course, you have, but potentially the best sub in those building to building gunfights, which I'm using the H9mm precision compensator for that vertical recoil control. And then for the sort of barrel itself, you can try and use the 12-inch MFS Sidewinder Prestige barrel for the plenty of recoil control, which I'm currently only experimenting with. This is not my actual build. The EAM Steady 90 grip for movement speed and recoil benefits. The Strike Face extended mag for the 40 bullets, but I do still find that this runs out of ammo way too quick, so potentially it is worth sacrificing that ADS speed and using the extended mag 2 instead. But you're going to find that it's a bit slower, even feels quite heavy as it is on base value, so maybe consider trying out the 2 and see what you find preference, depending on how many times you find yourself running out of ammo. I find anytime you come across 2 people, you don't really have enough ammo in the clip to try and use the extended mag 1, so that's personally what I would say to consider. And then also use the Vice Grip for the further recoil control, as it gives you that accuracy benefits. Now, the purpose of this build was more to cater towards recoil control, because I appreciate that this gun at a certain range has a ridiculous amount of recoil, and a lot of casual and average players who don't maybe use subs very often will struggle to use this thing. But of course, this gun is designed for close quarters, building to building sort of environments where you're going to really want to lean on those benefits. So realistically, if you want to change the build, personally, I think you should change out the Prestige attachment and go for something that's going to give you a bit more damage range, but you're going to lose that recoil benefit, but you're still also not going to slow down the gun too much either with regards to speed. And also, I've been using previously, which is not like, this is not my actual build. My actual build, I use the Haste rear grip, which is going to give you those ADS speeds, and also consider changing the barrel to the likes of the 13-inch Genesis barrel for that damage range, or consider using the 9.5 Synthesis barrel for also damage range and bullet velocity, where I find that this gun is going to be very useful. And also for the rear grip, you could also use the quick draw rear grip rather than the Vice to give you lose the recoil control, but you're going to gain further ADS speed as well. So just considering the ADS speed and the sort of mobility of this weapon is really where I think you're going to sort of excel with this gun. And to be honest with you, the ultimate question I would ask yourself if you're going to use this weapon is, are you using this because you want to try it for different things, or are you using it because you want to have the fastest killing submachine gun in the game, therefore use it at only close quarters? If you're finding you can't use this gun at anything past 15 to 20 meters, that's because this isn't the type of sub you want to use at that range anyway. I would therefore be using the MPC, which is what I've made a previous loadout build for in the other episode, which I went over earlier at the video, which is linked in the description. But this gun is more for building to building and fast-paced players. So if you guys find that this is going to be the type of gun for you, try this one out with this sort of faster build, and let me know down below, guys, on what you think of this sub, seeing as it is the fastest TTK gun in the game right now at close quarters, which we'll go over at the end of the video. Then, of course, we have the Maverick, which is the only burst weapon I would consider using right now. If you want to try different weapons, you're camo grinding, or you aren't a fan of all of the previous AR builds that I've gone over, try this one, as this is the best current burst weapon in the game, with the Lethal Tools ELO for Resurgence, which is my preference. The sight is, of course, always a preference point. The Hawker 473 compensator as the muzzle for the vertical recoil control. The 19.5-inch shroud barrel for the damage range and magazine capacity, as it gives you 45 bullets as well, as there is no mag on this gun, but of course you are losing ADS and reloading speed. But you can also consider using the long or hybrid barrel, but I personally would just keep this, as I think that the 45 bullets is definitely what you want to go for, especially if you want to take out multiple people in one go whilst you're ADS'd. I would then also use the Pillory quick draw rear grip for the ADS speeds, but if you do notice that the gun kick is too much for yourself, or you want more recoil control, try out the granulated accuracy rear grip instead, because you're going to find that this is far more stable for yourself. And then also the H01 full heavy stock for more recoil control and flinch resistance, but you'll be losing ADS, which I do think is fine, is balanced by the quick draw grip, but personally you could try out this as well. I think that this setup is really viable and gives you a good mixture of long range gunfights as well as medium range by using all 5 of these. But of course, if you don't even need the sight, you can take that off, and you can either use an underbarrel, or of course even try use the fire mods for the recoil control benefits as well. well. And then the final weapon is arguably the best gun in the entire game right now, the Sokol's LMG, which is what a lot of people have been using right now. And according to statistics, I think this is like an 18 to 20% pick rate right now across all of primary weapons in the game, which I do think speaks volumes. But of course, on Resurgence, this gun is going to slow you down a lot. So really, it does depend and comes down to what you find is how, like, what's catering to your playstyle, because this gun really will slow you down. It is an absolute beamer. It shreds when you're ADS'd, but moving around the map means you're going to have a real disadvantage versus the likes of an AR. It just, again, comes down to your playstyle and how you find yourself situationally. But for this weapon, I have gone for the absolute recoil-friendly, sort of stable build, where this thing is just not going to move. It's going to deal incredible damage, but you're, like I said, you're just not going to have any mobility whatsoever. But of course, you're not really using an LMG for that purpose anyway, so there is no need to try and lean towards the speed benefits. Of course, if you want to, you can try and get creative. But for this build, I'm using the Greaves 3x optic, which of course, and reminder, is a preference point. The monolithic suppressor, which I think is absolutely mandatory for the damage range. The 18.2-inch Perlos heavy barrel for recoil control. Then the Taction control stock for even more recoil control, as you can see. And then even more recoil control by using the buffer springs, which is going to be incredibly useful. You're not going to lose any ADS speeds, but of course you can actually take this off and try and use an underbarrel for more aiming stability and aim walking movement speed, as I appreciate you are going to be grounded by using this gun and this setup right here, by not having any ADS speed or any sort of moving speed whilst ADS or anything like that. So you can try and get a bit creative. I would definitely sacrifice the likes of either a sight, whether you don't want to play on the big map and therefore you don't need a sight, or if you don't think you need the fire mods, then maybe consider either using a rear grip or even an underbarrel for that stability. But that's pretty much it, guys, in terms of the builds for these weapons, with arguably being the best meta weapons to be using as of right now, with my previous 6 weapons on the episode before this, which is linked in the description, guys, to remind you guys. But for the TTKs of all of the weapons we've just gone over in this video, here is the following. So for the M15 up to 15 meters, this has a 624 millisecond TTK. The AK actually comes in even quicker at 616, and even up to 40 meters, it only increases to 619, which it outweighs the M15 at 639. So as you can see, the AK is a lot quicker in terms of TTK. It's just more about the recoil control, where the M15 I think edges it out, which is why the AK, you might want to lean towards a more recoil friendly build. The X9 Maverick has a 752 millisecond TTK all the way up to 40 meters. So as you can see, a lot slower in terms of TTK, but with it being so easy to use and with the burst in itself not being too difficult to control, I find that this weapon is definitely worth considering as well, especially if you're not interested in using any of the other traditional ARs. The Kogot submachine gun has a 567 TTK up to 15 meters, but significantly drops off up to 802 milliseconds at 40 meters, which is why it doesn't really come in at number 1, and it also sort of drops down to maybe the 3rd or 4th best submachine gun when you're fairing in TTKs. The Razor actually, like I said, has the fastest TTK at close quarters in the entire game at 540, beating out even the NPC and the Carbon. But as the distance increases with this weapon up to 40 meters, the Razor's sort of TTK drops off significantly at 850 millisecond TTK at anything up to 40 meters, which is why you want to use this gun only at close quarters up to 15 meters, because anything past that point, anything outside on the streets, not building to building, is where this gun is going to really let you down versus the likes of an NPC or even the Carbon. And then of course we have the Sokol LMG, one of the best guns in the game right now, if not number 1, with a 617 TTK even at close quarters up to 15 meters, and only a 627 TTK at 15 to 40 meters, meaning that this is one of the fastest killing weapons in the game right now. You're going to lose that mobility aspect, of course, versus the likes of an AR, but when you are down sight, playing a long range map and you're set up, that this gun is probably going to be the best and most reliable weapon to have, especially in unskilled hands where you're not comfortable moving around the map and you don't want to even, you're not even considering that speed benefit, where this gun is really going to give you that advantage. So bear all of these things in mind: TTK, reliability, and also versatility with all of the weapons that I've gone over. Hopefully this guide has helped you guys with giving you guys an understanding on the best meta weapons to be using right now, alongside my previous builds, which I went over in last week's episode, and also giving you guys a full understanding on what the attachments will do, how they cater to your playstyle, and how you can implement that into your game going forward. So hopefully take away all of that, and hopefully you guys can be better Warzone players going forward. I'm Vision SGen, really hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one.